remote cluster of coral islands, barely visible on a world map, has suddenly become the center of a geopolitical explosion, and Donald Trump is livid. Livid enough to accuse Britain of great stupidity. Livid enough to warn that China and Russia are watching. Livid enough to drag Greenland into the argument. The Chagos Islands sit isolated in the Indian Ocean, far from capitals and cameras. Yet, they host Diego Garcia, one of America's most secretive and powerful overseas military bases. Britain now plans to hand over sovereignty of the islands to Mauritius, while keeping the base through a lease. Trump says this is weakness masquerading as diplomacy. Britain says it is obeying international law. The United States once praised the deal. Now its president is attacking it publicly. So what exactly are the Chagos Islands, and why does Trump think Britain would be stupid to give them up? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. The controversy revolves around Diego Garcia, a remote island that anchors US and UK military power across Asia and West Asia. Britain plans to transfer sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius while leasing Diego Garcia for 99 years, ensuring continued military use. International courts say Britain must decolonize. British governments argue they have no legal choice. Trump says the move screams total weakness and signals vulnerability to China and Russia. He once praised the agreement as a success. Now, he condemns it as foolishness. Is this a legal obligation Britain cannot escape, or a strategic mistake Trump believes the world's rivals will exploit?
You know, when they originally were going to do it, they were talking about doing some concept of ownership. But now they're looking to essentially just do a lease and sell it. And I'm against that. You know, it's a reasonably nothing like Greenland, but it's a reasonably important area of the globe. Not to anywhere near Greenland, but I think they should keep it.
The Chagos Islands are an archipelago of more than 60 coral islands scattered across the central Indian Ocean, more than 1,000 miles northeast of Mauritius. The land itself is tiny, just about 60 square kilometers, but it sits inside a vast oceanic space stretching roughly 56,000 square kilometers. Britain has administered the islands since 1965 as the British Indian Ocean Territory, but their history goes back much further. The UK took control of the islands along with Mauritius in 1814 under the Treaty of Paris after Napoleon's defeat. For decades, the islands were treated as a dependency of Mauritius, economically and administratively linked. What transformed them from obscurity into global significance was not population, resources, or trade, but military strategy. Diego Garcia is the largest island in the Chagos archipelago, and it is the reason the world suddenly cares. In 1971, during the Cold War, the US and UK built a major military base there to block Soviet influence in the region. Its isolation was its strength. No nearby government to pressure operations, no unstable host politics, no regional unrest. Over time, Diego Garcia became one of America's most important overseas military assets. It has supported 2 invasions of Iraq, served as a key landing and refueling hub for bombers flying missions across Asia, and played a role in surveillance and intelligence operations. It is secretive, central, and operationally independent. Exactly the kind of base the US never wants to lose. But the base came at a cost. Between 1968 and 1973, the entire Chagossian population was removed from the islands. Around 2,000 people were displaced and sent to Mauritius and Seychelles, severed from their homeland without consultation or consent. Today, the global Chagossian population is estimated at around 10,000, living largely in the UK, Mauritius, and Seychelles. Crucially, the negotiations over the island's future took place without their involvement. A Whitestone Insight poll of more than 3,600 respondents found that the Chagossian community overwhelmingly opposed transferring sovereignty to Mauritius and preferred remaining under British control. Their voices, however, were sidelined as governments focused on law, strategy, and diplomacy. Mauritius has long claimed sovereignty over the Chagos Islands and pursued the case relentlessly through international legal forums. In 2019, the International Court of Justice ruled that Britain must return the islands to Mauritius as rapidly as possible, arguing that doing so would complete Mauritius's decolonization in line with the right to self-determination. Although the ruling was non-binding, it triggered mounting international pressure. The United Nations backed the decision. Britain's position became increasingly isolated. Successive British governments, Conservative and Labour, concluded that ignoring the ruling would damage Britain's standing as a country that claims to respect international law. For London, compliance became a matter of credibility. Under the treaty in May 2025 by Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Mauritius's leadership, Britain will transfer sovereignty over the entire Chagos archipelago to Mauritius. However, Diego Garcia is treated differently. Britain will lease the military base for 99 years, paying Mauritius an average of €101 million annually. The arrangement allows continued UK and US military operations without interruption. The treaty includes security guarantees, bans foreign militaries from the outer islands, and preserves operational control over Diego Garcia. When the agreement was signed, the US State Department explicitly welcomed it, saying it secured the long-term, stable, and effective operation of the base. Trump himself initially supported it. Critics warn that if Mauritius were ever to offer an outer island near Diego Garcia to China or Russia for surveillance, logistics, or influence, it would validate claims of Western weakness. China has publicly praised the deal as a decolonization victory and maintains economic ties with Mauritius through platforms like BRICS, while Russia has stayed officially silent but aligned rhetorically against British control. That fuels suspicion. However, under the 2024-25 agreement, Mauritius is explicitly barred from hosting foreign militaries on the outer islands, and the UK retains veto powers and security review mechanisms through a joint commission to block any activity deemed a threat to Diego Garcia. As of January 2026, there is no evidence of Chinese or Russian bids for any island. The fear is real, but for now, it remains a fear, not a fact. American support did not last. In January 2026, Trump erupted on Truth Social, accusing Britain of planning to give away Diego Garcia, and I quote, for no reason whatsoever. He called the move an act of great stupidity and total weakness, warning that China and Russia would see it as an invitation. He directly contradicted his earlier praise of the deal and ignored the safeguards built into the treaty. To Trump, sovereignty itself matters more than leases or legal assurances. Paying to retain access looks like surrender, not strategy. In his worldview, power is respected only when it is absolute and unchallenged. Trump's attack reignited fierce debate inside the UK. Nigel Farage claimed that the Americans had been misled and that Britain had not been forced to surrender the islands. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch went further, calling the deal complete self-sabotage. Critics argue that Britain is paying billions to give up territory that already hosts one of the world's most important military bases. Supporters counter that refusing to comply with international rulings could have led to worse outcomes, including eventual loss of the base altogether. Despite the backlash, Labour's large parliamentary majority means the deal is still likely to pass. Trump's comments took an even stranger turn when he linked Britain's decision on the Chagos Islands to his belief that the US must acquire Greenland. He framed both as national security issues, arguing that weakness by allies justifies stronger, more aggressive American control elsewhere. He offered no detailed explanation, but the logic was consistent with his worldview. Territory equals power, and power must never be voluntarily reduced. In Trump's mind, Britain's decision is proof that international law is a trap and that only raw strength prevents exploitation by rivals. At its core, this is a clash of philosophies. Starmer argues Britain has a legal and moral obligation to complete decolonization. Trump openly rejects such constraints. Asked what limits his power on the world stage, he said only his own morality and mind can stop him, and that he does not need international law. The Chagos Islands have become a symbol of this divide. One side sees rules as stabilizers. The other sees them as weaknesses. One side prioritizes legitimacy. The other prioritizes dominance.
I don't think Britain should be embarrassed or humiliated at all, quite frankly. Diego Garcia, which is a small island that was part of the British Empire, was having its sovereignty challenged by the Mauritian government. We've secured that island as a military base for the next 100 years because it is an important military base for the UK and for our NATO allies, including the United States. That was why the deal was welcomed by President Trump and the American administration, because the deal not only secured the island for the next century, but gave us very, very important security guarantees about the functioning of the island and the seas near it. That is the right way to secure the future of the island, and I wouldn't for a second suggest that Britain should be embarrassed or humiliated by any of those decisions. As I say, geopolitics is increasingly volatile, I recognise that, but we shouldn't be cowed by that. We should stand up to it, we should protect our values and the way in which the world works to protect the British people and British interests. That's what we have done, and it's what we will continue to do.
The Chagos Islands may be small, remote and sparsely populated, but they sit at the intersection of history, law, military power and global rivalry. Diego Garcia remains a silent but critical pillar of US and UK operations. Britain believes the deal secures that pillar for a century. Trump believes the very act of surrendering sovereignty undermines strength. Mauritius insists the issue is settled by international law. The Chagossians remain divided and largely unheard. What looks like a technical legal transfer is, in reality, a stress test of how the world balances law against power, and who gets to decide what weakness really looks like. What makes Trump's outrage sharper is America's own deep role in creating the Chagos reality. The United States was instrumental in identifying Diego Garcia as a Cold War prize, pushing Britain to detach the islands from Mauritius in the 1960s and establish the British Indian Ocean Territory. Through secret negotiations and pressure on British leaders, the US secured exclusive access via a 1966 agreement and oversaw the construction of the base after the forced removal of around 2,000 Chagossians. Diego Garcia became a cornerstone of American power projection, supporting wars from Iraq to Afghanistan and operations across the Middle East or West Asia and Indo-Pacific. From Trump's perspective, paying to lease back a base the US helped create feels like rewriting history in reverse. To him, sovereignty lost, even symbolically, is leverage surrendered, no matter how airtight the safeguards appear on paper.
Mr. Speaker, I've made out my position on Greenland absolutely clear on Monday and a moment ago. President Trump deployed words on Chagos yesterday that were different to his previous words of welcome and support when I met him in the White House. He deployed those words yesterday for the express purpose of putting pressure on me and Britain in relation to my values and principles on the future of Greenland. Mr. Speaker, he wants me to yield on my position, and I'm not going to do so. Given that that was his express purpose, I'm surprised the Leader of the Opposition has jumped on the bandwagon. The words from President Trump were expressly intended to put pressure on me to yield on my principles. What he said about Chagos was literally in the same sentence as what he said about Greenland. That was his purpose. And the future of Greenland is a binary issue that is splitting the world at the moment with material consequences. I've been clear and consistent in my position on the future of Greenland. The future is for Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone. Well, he clearly isn't listening. I said I will not yield on the principles and values that I uphold, this country upholds in relation to the future of Greenland. But the relationship with the US matters, especially on defense, security, and intelligence and nuclear capability, also on trade and prosperity.
China and Russia have not stormed the microphones over the Chagos Islands deal, but their shadows loom large over the debate, and Trump has made sure of that. Publicly, both powers have kept their reactions limited. Privately, critics argue they are the silent beneficiaries of what Trump calls Western weakness. China welcomed the transfer in principle as an act of sovereignty and decolonization, carefully avoiding any criticism of the continued US-UK military presence on Diego Garcia. Russia, meanwhile, has remained largely silent, issuing no major statements while quietly aligning with anti-colonial rhetoric in international forums. Trump insists both powers are noticing Britain's move, not because of the islands themselves, but because sovereignty shifts signal something bigger: hesitation, concession, and a willingness to retreat in a world where rivals only respect strength. China's response has been disciplined and strategic. In 2025, Beijing's ambassador to Mauritius publicly praised the Chagos Agreement as a historical achievement, framing it as a victory for sovereignty and decolonization, principles China regularly invokes in its own territorial disputes. Beijing supported the 2019 UN General Assembly resolution backing the International Court of Justice ruling against British administration, presenting its vote as ideological consistency rather than hostility toward the US base. Although behind the scenes, analysts note a paradox. The deal actually removes the talking point China used to accuse the West of hypocrisy on international law. But at the same time, fears persist in Washington that China could exploit Mauritius's BRICS ties or economic engagement for long-term influence, even though the treaty bans foreign militaries on outer islands and includes security vetoes to block any encroachment near Diego Garcia. Russia's role is quieter but still invoked. Moscow has made no prominent public statements on the 2025 agreement, reflecting its comparatively limited Indian Ocean footprint. It supported UN votes critical of Britain's administration of the Chagos Islands, aligning with broader anti-Western and decolonization narratives, but without demonstrating concrete ambitions tied to Mauritius or Diego Garcia. Trump nevertheless named Russia alongside China in his 20th January 2026 post, arguing that both powers would interpret Britain's decision as total weakness. Russian naval activity in the wider region remains sporadic, and the treaty's 99-year lease and buffer zones neutralize direct military risks. Here, the concern is less about immediate action and more about perception. In a multipolar world, even symbolic retreats are seen as opportunities. Diego Garcia will likely remain operational for decades, locked in by leases, buffer zones, and treaties. But the argument it has triggered will not fade so easily. The islands have become a symbol of deeper fracture between law and force, restraint and dominance, obligation and instinct. Trump calls Britain stupid because, in his worldview, power is never shared and never given back. Britain insists it is acting responsibly. The Chagos Islands now sit as proof that in global politics, even doing everything by the book can still be judged as weakness. Thank you for watching Statecraft.